start.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for the invite to be here today. I would like to start my talk for all of you thinking about if you have ever made a decision based on a gut feeling. And do you sometimes feel nervous and feel this in your belly? Actually, I do right now. This is a proof that there's a connection between our gut and our brain, the so-called gut-brain axis. And this gut-brain axis is a bidirectional communication system between the gut and the brain, where both of these organs can influence each other in both directions. The dominant physical connection is the vagus nerve. And biochemically, the immune system, neurotransmitters, and hormones play a major role. And as you all know, the gut is populated by a vast amount of microbial life, the so-called gut microbiota. We here at NGBI, we aim to modulate the gut microbiota, and by that modulate the gut-brain axis, as well as brain function and mental health. Today I will talk about one study where we used probiotics as a tool for gut microbiota modifications and gut-brain axis modifications. We built our study on preclinical evidence with a probiotic mixture of Bifidobacterium longum, Lactobacillus helveticus, and Lactobacillus plantarum. This preclinical evidence was performed in a mouse model of chronic mild stress by Lee et al. 2018. And the chronic mild stress itself caused anxiety and depressive-like behaviors, along with molecular changes in the hippocampus. And this is a brain region. Now, the probiotic could attenuate the CMS-induced anxiety and depressive-like behaviors, significantly increase lactobacillus abundance, and reverse the CMS-induced immune changes in the brain and the hippocampus. We have now used exactly this probiotic mixture to assess its effect in a human study population for the very first time. And here you can see where you can find our publications, and one more is coming very soon. We conducted a randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blinded crossover study with 22 healthy subjects, and all our subjects were assessed extensively at baseline. We did autonomic nervous system function assessment. Our study participants performed the Stroop task. They filled in a bunch of questionnaires, mostly regarding mental health and quality of life. We collected blood, saliva, and fecal samples. Thereafter, our study participants received a probiotic intervention or a placebo for 4 weeks. And during that, they continued filling out questionnaires either weekly or daily, depending on the nature of the questionnaire. After the intervention period, which was at 4 weeks, we assessed exactly the same outcomes as we did at baseline, and we additionally did some brain imaging analysis, where we used functional magnetic resonance imaging, which I will explain very soon. After the first intervention period, we had a washout of 4 weeks, and then a second intervention period where all study participants who received the probiotic intervention in the first period received the placebo now, and vice versa. And the assessments were exactly the same before, during, and after the second intervention period as for the first. The aim of the study was to examine the effect of the probiotic intervention in healthy subjects on brain response patterns to an emotional task, brain response patterns and autonomic nervous system function during acute psychological stress challenges, resting state brain function, psychological symptoms, biomarkers of gut-brain interactions, as well as composition of the gut microbiota. And for the sake of time, I will focus on these outcomes today. Our main method was functional magnetic resonance imaging, short fMRI. So before we go to the methods and the results, let's make sure that we all understand this method. If we look anatomically and structurally at the brain of Homer Simpson, some might claim he has a little brain. But if we now would look what is going on in this brain, there might be a lot of function. And this is what we can measure using fMRI. fMRI data and analysis is very complex, and I will focus on one specifically what we used for our study, but we used others as well. And when we talk about the results, you will see them all visualized in the same way. Namely, the brain is scanned in various slices in its 3 dimensions. And you will see figure panels which show the brain here as an average anatomical image of our study population, always in this way. So you can see it from its 3 dimensions. Okay, let's jump into the results. Brain responses towards emotions were our primary outcome, and for this, we performed an emotion attention task called the EAT, while our subjects were laying in the fMRI scanner and their brain function was recorded continuously. They saw on screens the task, which was match shapes task and the match emotion tasks, where they were asked in the first condition for a combination of shapes to match which of the shapes shown on the bottom of the screen represents the one shown on the top of the screen. So here it is a circle with circle. And during the match emotions task, which was always negative emotions, namely fear or anger, our participants were asked to match which of the faces on the bottom of the screen shows the same emotion as the one shown on the top of the screen, which is this one in this case. And for the purpose of analysis, we then wanted to analyze the pure emotional effect. So we wanted to take away just the visual stimulus or, for example, the finger movement by what they needed to answer their task with hand-to-hand response scripts. To do that, we took the brain responses recorded during the match emotions condition, and from that subtracted the brain responses recorded during match shapes condition. We have analyzed these results in terms of brain activity, so which brain regions are active or are less active maybe after the probiotic intervention. And we also have analyzed the communication of different brain regions. And this is what we call functional connectivity. And I chose to show you these results today. Here you can see 8 panels of different brain regions where you see the yellowish clusters being the brain regions superimposed on average anatomical images that are involved in different communication between different brain regions. And here we see each arrow presenting a pair of brain regions that communicates differently after the probiotic compared to after the placebo. All these arrows are blue, which indicates that the connection between these brain regions was less after the probiotic intervention compared to the placebo. And we interpret this in the way that the reactivity of the brain towards negative emotional stimuli is dampened after probiotic intervention compared to placebo. We also looked at brain function during rest, and this is very interesting because the brain is not silent at rest, what you might think. Also, unconscious persons do have some brain activity which we can measure. And here we also looked at how the brain regions communicate with each other and found a couple of brain regions, pairs of brain regions, which are here shown per line, that show different functional connectivity, so communication, after the probiotic compared to the placebo intervention. And for some of them, we saw an increased communication, and we saw a decreased communication for some others. The overall notion of these results is that the brain seems to use less resources to fulfill the same task, so it's working more effective after probiotic intervention compared to placebo. I know that brain communication or activity results might be very abstract, so we also wanted to include something what we can pinpoint a little bit more on, and therefore we used psychological symptom assessment based on the questionnaires which our participants filled in weekly during the entire study period. And we are looking at some of these today. In the lower left corner, you can see what the abbreviations mean, but we will focus on that all these questionnaires are about mental health. They are mostly about anxiety, depression symptoms, stress perception, and quality of life. For all of these questionnaires, a decrease in score would mean an improvement of mental health. So, for example, less depression symptoms. And we can see placebo always here as dots and the probiotic as squares. And when we look at the first 3 graphs, we see the hospital anxiety depression scale with the total scale and its anxiety and depression subscores, where the total scale and the depression scale showed non-significant decreased improvement, which showed a trend, but no significance as said. And all the other scores did not show any trend towards significance or significance as said. To conclude, the probiotic intervention evoked changes in resting state and task-related brain function, and a tendency towards improvement of some psychological symptoms. And I didn't show this to you, but I can tell you this all was without any major effects on the gut microbiota composition itself. And we deem it promising that such a mild intervention as probiotic intervention evoked effects even in healthy subjects. Thank you very much, and here you can see our funders as well, how you can contact us. Thanks.